Hello, Garrett. Welcome to the
Hello.
hello. Welcome to the Feldenkrais Guild Feldenkrais Guild newsletter. I will interview Garrett, and she will give a mini Feldenkrais lesson after the interview. So Garrett is a Feldenkrais practitioner, and she was the first to start a training in England. So she runs a training school in England in Sussex, and she works in London and Sussex. Is that correct, Garrett? What brought you to Feldenkrais, Garrett?
Well, it was a real kind of search for something that brought together my interest in science and my interest in movement. And Moshe was really quite unique in being able to bring those two um, really subjects and themes together in a way that they were always very separate. When I was in school, you studied something academic, and anything that had to do with movement or expression was considered extracurricular. So this was a real split for me in my life because I was very good academically, but I really much more enjoyed my dance classes and my activities that involved movement. And so I had to study in an academic field when I first went to university. And I glimpsed in a room where they were doing an art history course, and I thought, oh, here's a way I can learn about the arts, but be in the academic field. So that was my kind of start to get away from science, which we were all being sort of pushed to study, and I was very good in sciences at that time. But I always did dance classes as a extracurricular activity. They started to take over in the last few years of my university education because we started a performance group, and I was spending probably as many hours doing that as I was my academic studies. But I managed to finish and graduate. And then there was a real turning point where I decided that the desire to want to dance was stronger than I could find a way to do something about it. So I left the academic field and I went to study dance in New York, which was a real kind of, what can I say, making myself do something that wasn't really very acceptable at that time academically. So to make it acceptable, I enrolled in a master's degree program in New York University, which was really, I think, one of the only two universities where you could study dance as an academic field at that time.
Wow.
And then while I was preparing my loft to be a dance space, I had an injury. Something fell on me, and I had a very bad neck and upper spine injury. So I couldn't really dance in the way that I had wished that I could. So I was, doing my master's degree, and I was also looking for different ways of being able to come back to dance and not be in the pain that I was in from the accident. So that led me down a lot of interesting paths to a lot of interesting teachers. And and we had to read Moshe's book as part of our master's degree program. It had just been published, Awareness and Movement. And there weren't any teachers of the Feldenkrais method in New York at that time. It was still, I mean, Moshe hadn't even been in the US at that point. And so it wasn't possible to experience it, but the book was, everybody had Moshe's book and everybody read it and everybody tried to do the awareness and movement lessons from the book, which, as we know, is not a very easy thing to do. So after I finished my master's degree in New York, I moved to San Francisco, and that's where Moshe had just finished, or he had just finished a 3-year training program. So I met one of the recent graduates, who was Jerry Carson, and I asked him for a lesson, and he gave me an individual lesson, and I felt something in that lesson and in his hands and the touch and in what it was about, that I just turned to him afterwards and I said, I want to learn what you know. It was just so obvious to me that all the things I had done up to then weren't quite as effective as what
Wow.
he had in that one lesson showed me. So he ended up being the organizer of the Amherst training, which was Moshe's next training, and then turned out to be his last training. And that took place in Amherst, Massachusetts. So I did everything I could to be there. I had never done an awareness and movement lesson before then because there weren't any, and there weren't any teachers. So it was a real learning experience to be there and be exposed to, you know, this really brilliant person who had this kind of, I felt like I was getting the kind of holistic education that I finally wanted. You know, someone who understood my interest in movement and understood my interest in wanting to scientifically and intellectually understand how important movement is in our lives.
Oh, fabulous. And what's your favorite thing about the method?
Well, I think one of my favorite things is that it's about learning. And because of having this real kind of academic background, learning is not often very valued in the real sense of what we know as learning. You know, learning is about writing papers and doing research and, you know, an academic world. But real learning takes place from the time you're born, you know, that you learn how to do all the movements that get you to onto your feet at the end of a year. And I really was attracted to that idea of, or that emphasis on learning. Also, there's a really important connection in all of Moshe's teaching between movement, thinking, sensing, emotion, and the environment. And this is really about being human. And that was what I was attracted to, that this encompassed all of what we are as human beings. I also like that the lessons aren't about finding, the method isn't about finding the right way to do things, that it's about finding what works for you, finding what's appropriate, and also moving in that direction of what's most comfortable and easy and therefore efficient. And there's so much movement activities around these days that are about, you know, being hard and taking yourself to your limits. And I just was very comforted, especially because I had an injury, that you could learn within comfort and limits. And I think that's a real valuable aspect of the method. And then also, I think the connection that we make with our students is a connection through learning and supporting their learning process and finding just incredibly creative ways to do this, because nothing's really set up so that we have to do something in a certain way. And I think that gives the artists in us the creative energy to find what works, basically.
That's fabulous. What is your favorite case study of someone who's been transformed by the method?
Well, I'm remembering something that was really important to me. I worked with a lot of children, and when I came to England and the program that was on TV, the Healing Arts program, had a lot of shots of people, Feldenkrais teachers, working with children. So we got a lot of children coming to us at that time. And one of my favorites was a little boy whose mother had heard about the method, and she brought him and his twin for lessons, and they came pretty much weekly for lessons for a long time. And he was really he was really active. He had cerebral palsy, so he was limited in how he could do things, but he just wanted to throw himself around and, you know, try to be a normal kid, and he wasn't able to do that. But he was highly intelligent. And I managed to find ways, and this is where our creativity comes in, to calm him down and get him to pay attention to those little steps that enable you to do the next step, because he was always going for the goal and then not reaching it and then, you know, being frustrated. And that was difficult for him. But when he started doing that, he really found that he could achieve things that he couldn't achieve previously. And I remember one story, because children with cerebral palsy are very flexed, and so he was in this position a lot. And so I taught him to roll over and do somersaults on the floor, and he got really good at it. And one time he came into lesson, his sister was just smiling. She said, he did the best somersaults of anybody in the school. And so it was a way to kind of help him to feel able, and that he actually had talents and ability to learn. He was just limited in terms of, you know, what he could do at that point in his life. So I did things like had him stand on his head, and he really, you know, just learned a lot, and it was fun. It was fun while doing it for both of us. The best part of that story is that one time the father came to the lesson, and the father kind of sat and watched, and at the end he came up to me and said, well, when will he walk? And I said, well, he's got a lot of steps that he needs to go through in development before walking will be easy for him. And I said, but if you're interested in that question, I would really encourage you to come to one of my developmental courses and lie on the floor and learn what your son is learning to do. And so he did. And he's now a Feldenkrais teacher, and he's now a teacher of the developmental course, and he helps, children with the similar kind of problems that his son had. And that's a really lovely story.
That is incredible. Transformation for the whole
Yeah.
lots of people as a Feldenkrais practitioner. And what's your strongest memory or personal memory of Moshe?
Well, I have a lot. That was a difficult question for me to put into, one memory. But I had a lot of contact with Moshe because Jerry Carson and his girlfriend Diane Van Anda lived with Moshe, and Diane and I were very close friends before we did the training. So I was around the house a lot, and so saw Moshe in a lot of more regular contact than just as a teacher. So I remember one story, well, two stories that were kind of funny. One was that I got asked to cook for him at first because they needed people to support him in some ways. And he didn't like any of my cooking because it was vegetarian, and I heard he was supposed to be on a low salt diet. So I was trying to do low salt meals, and I got fired, and he found a French cook who cooked the way he wanted to. But then I became the house cleaner. So one time when I was the house cleaner, I neatened up his desk. He just had these papers all over the place, and I just kind of, put them in little piles. And he yelled at me the next day. He said, "You completely destroyed my order in that desk." And it was just a real lesson to me that people have a different sense of order, and that one person's order may not be another person's order. But the funniest story that's even just shorter than that was like I came into the house one time during lunch, and I found Moshe asleep on the floor, and he had a roller behind his head, and he had his legs crossed. It was like he was in the middle of an awareness and movement lesson, and he just went to sleep. And it was just so beautiful to watch the way he actually lives his work. Sorry about that.
I've never heard those stories before, so thank you.
I don't tell them very often, so this is a special opportunity to do that.
And can you give me a Feldenkrais ATM or Feldenkrais mini lesson, I should say, rather than
I can, yeah. This is one of the things I like to do when I've been sitting somewhere and it's a little tiring to just stay still or to stay in one position. So yeah, I would ask you to come sit on the edge of your chair first and to really feel your sitting bones in contact with the chair, and to feel your knees balanced above your ankles. And if you take your right hand and just place it on the inside of your left thigh, and you can let your left arm just hang at your side, and just start to slide along the inside of your left thigh until you get to the inside of your knee, and then continue to slide down along your lower leg. So it'll bring you forward. You'll bend forward in your torso, and just keep your eyes and your head kind of following the direction that your torso takes while you're doing that. And just go as far as you can go easily and come back, because there's a kind of a desire maybe to want to reach the ankle, but it's nicer just to do it as far as it's easy and then return. And then each time you'll probably be able to go a little bit further in that direction. So just do that a few more times. And you'll probably start to notice that your right shoulder comes a little bit forward as your hand is sliding down your leg. And you start to look a little bit over towards your left with your head and with your eyes, just a little bit, following that slight rotation. Okay, and then just stop and take a rest. And now take your left hand and place it on the middle of your left thigh. So your fingertips are going towards your knee. And again, just slide it down. This time it'll slide down the middle of your left thigh, over the middle of your knee, and start to slide down the middle of your lower leg. And again, just let the torso bend, and you feel that when your hand's in this position, you have to do a little bit more rotating in order to reach down towards your ankle. But just go as far as it's easy and comfortable, and then come back. And then slowly let that go and just come back and take a rest. And now take the right hand and place it on the outside of your upper left thigh and start to slide it down the outside of your leg. So you're going on the outside of your knee and you're going downwards towards the outside of your left ankle. And this requires your right shoulder to come forward even more, for you to rotate a little bit more in the upper torso, and then to return. The important thing with this lesson, with all these lessons, is just to go as far as it's comfortable and then return, and not push yourself to try to reach your ankle if it's not easy to do that. And you can do kind of very subtle versions of this in the airport or while waiting for the doctor. And you can do bigger versions when you have more privacy at home to reach down towards your ankle. And just come back now and sit again, and turn now your head and your eyes just to look a little bit to the left, and then come back to the middle. And then do the same thing with your head and your eyes looking to the right. And can you see that it's not as easy to go to the right as it is to go to the left?
How did you do that?
Well, you do that actually. Your system has made something feel familiar, a direction feel familiar, and then the direction that isn't familiar feels different. What's wonderful about these kinds of lessons is that you realize how much, just by sitting and being still, sometimes we aren't doing a lot of the rotational and various kinds of movements that the spine and the torso and the eyes and the head can do. And that's why it's a little bit of a relief when you're sitting and you're maybe oriented forwards, to be able to do something that changes that orientation. And it's a gradual rotation. The first one on the inside doesn't require so much rotation. The middle requires a little bit more, and the outside requires a little bit more. And then you feel that something has shifted in the ability to be able to rotate to that side. So of course you can do the whole lesson turned around with your right hand on your left hand on the right thigh, first on the inside, then on the top, then on the outside. And you would probably have a similar effect afterwards when you came and turned to the left at the end. So I hope that you enjoyed that lesson.
I loved it.
And that you can use it.
I loved it. Thank you so much. That's so wonderful. Just something very easy to do. As you say, so important when you're sitting at the desk and you're in the same position. That's crucial for a lot of us. Thank you.
And you can do it in your imagination in the theater.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you.